So we had full moon in Sagittarius at the weekend. We also had a blue moon. So a blue moon is literally when we get 2 full moons in a month. So both of those things are on my mind because I had an interesting weekend. My name's Gail. Welcome to my YouTube channel. The Diary of an Energy-Led Woman. And this is exactly what it says on the tin. It is my diary. It is my opportunity to drop in here and chat to you about what's going on in my world, what I've noticed, how I am being pushed down this pathway of evolution, and the trajectory and the obstacles and everything that comes up as I go. And I'm beginning to think that you're on a really strange angle because I'm really having to look up into the camera. So anyway, if you saw my previous video, you will notice these shelves are empty compared to what they were last time. So last week when I did a video, this room was an utter mess because we were about to rip up carpets, we were about to decorate. Decorating's done, laminate flooring's down. Now it's just a case of putting everything back in. And I don't want it to be a kind of really cluttered space. I am going to be using this for glamour magic. I'm going to be using this to support my self-care rituals and routines. And so I want it to be nice. So there we go. So, full moon in Sagittarius. I'm not pulling a card today. I have cards ready. Full moon in Sagittarius. Look at the bigger picture. Now I've got to find the bloody thing. Hang on a sec. Right, here we go. Full moon in Sagittarius. Okay, we're just going to get the gist. We're not reading everything in here. So the teaching, okay? The full moon in Sagittarius is a time when we are reminded that life is an adventure and that there's a big wide world beyond our backyard. It's about having fun and being prepared to sail into uncharted territory. It's about big ideas versus the details. No matter when you draw this card, it encourages you to look at the bigger picture. So this card is a reminder that while it's good to think things through, sometimes you need to step back and look at the bigger picture. What do you see about your current life, your current situation, So let's now just have a quick read of Blue Moon. So that is our Blue Moon card. This is the Moonology deck, by the way, guys. Moonology Oracle deck. So let's have a quick look at what the Blue Moon is telling us. Let me find it. It's always the problem with this, doing it this way. So, 1 and 2, Blue Moon. Believe in the impossible. So the teaching, there are usually 3 full moons between each equinox and solstice and vice versa. Aha. Sometimes, though, we get 4 full moons in a single season. When that happens, the third of the season's 4 full moons is called a blue moon. At least that was the original definition of a blue moon. These days, it's popular to use the blue moon for the second full moon in any calendar month that has 2 full moons. Interesting, okay. So as the saying goes, some things happen only once in a blue moon. In other words, hardly ever. Drawing this card suggests you're about to get a rare chance that something one-off could well be about to happen. This card is a very positive sign if you felt like you're hoping for too much or asking too much of the universe. To be fair, these cards don't reflect the total meanings that I've come across when I've been researching this over the last couple of days. Which is a shame, but hey, you know, the cards help us to understand something's wrong with that lash. I don't know what it is, but it's going to have to do. I think I've said to you before, I don't tend to sleep in these lashes because I find that my own lashes get kind of like moved around. I maybe lay flat on them or whatever. So I tend to take them off anyway. Anyway, we're not here to talk about my makeup. We're here to talk about the blue moon. So it's all the way that it's been described to me, the way that I've found information about full moon in Sagittarius and the blue moon is kind of like, obviously Sagittarius is like the archer, right? So it's kind of like getting the arrow and directing it. And the blue moon helps you to release any weight behind it, anything that's holding it back almost, to give it more power. So obviously, depending on who you read, depending on where you are in life, as I said to you the other day with tarot cards, you know, yes, you do take what it's saying and interpret it across your life, because that's how we learn, that's how we use these things to understand our life, you know, and depending on different stages in my life, I can read these cards differently. They don't have a singular meaning. That's the point. The point is, when you read, when you understand them, what does it draw up for you? And that's kind of what I wanted to come here and talk about, although they've thrown me ever so slightly. Because they're all about looking at the bigger picture. And I suppose I have been looking at the bigger picture. But I feel like so this weekend, so interesting. I love it. I love it when this kind of stuff happens. So this weekend, because we were sorting this room out, it ended up being a kind of like a full-on situation, because I was thinking to myself, I don't want to put, this room had got so cluttered. Everything that belonged to me had ended up in this room pretty much. And I was like, I've got other rooms in this house. I've got other storage spaces. Why am I storing everything in this one little room? And there's literally no air. It felt like there was no air flowing through all these obstacles. It felt like the air was stagnant in the house in these areas. So I was like, right, I need to really kind of sort this out. So I went into like another bedroom and I looked in the wardrobes, and the wardrobes were the same. Totally cluttered, totally stagnant energy. So I was like, right, I've got to clear these wardrobes to make space for some of the stuff that comes from this room, so that I don't have to put everything back in this room. So it ended up being a massive kind of clear out, really, this weekend. And it was really interesting to me, because the research I did on the blue moon yesterday was all about, I'm really annoyed at those cards. They've kind of put me off a little bit, but the research I did on this full moon yesterday was all about like really kind of getting on that pathway, getting on that trajectory, getting that direction forward, and releasing whatever was holding you back, and releasing all the things, and it was like, but it was more so than just kind of like a standard full moon, because of the blue moon, and it was just more powerful, and it was just more. I might need to come back and I might need to put something in the caption. I will put in the caption what I understood the blue moon and the full moon to be about at the weekend before I read those cards. They have kind of made me go a little bit, oh, nothing fits together now. So I will put that in the caption when I finish this video, because I can't totally remember it, and I thought I was going to remember it through those cards, and then those cards have sent me off on a different trajectory. So I'm a bit like, oh, now my brain's kind of like lost what I thought the blue moon and the full moon was. Anyway, ultimately, when I sat back and researched the blue moon, the full moon on Monday, yesterday, it seemed to fit what had happened to me over the weekend. So let's just talk through what happened to me over the weekend and see where that takes us. So I wanted space, I wanted freshness, I wanted air to circulate around my house. I wanted it to feel like the energy was moving. It felt very much like the energy was stagnant. Every cupboard I opened was, every wardrobe, every drawer, it was jam-packed, and there was no space for air to move and to circulate. And I was like, this energy is really stagnant in this house now. And I was like, I need to make space. I need to get the air flowing. I need to get movement happening. So that was my task. Now, I have found it very, very difficult, you might have guessed, since we moved into this house, which was 14 years ago, to throw stuff away, to give stuff to charity. I have gone through some massive transitions since I moved into this house. And I was holding on to stuff, lots of stuff, that belonged to different eras of me. Stuff that was just sat. It wasn't used, it wasn't in use, it was loved, but I wasn't in love with it. Like generally on day to day, it was just in a drawer. It was just sat in a drawer, waiting, I suppose, for the time when I might kind of reconnect to it and be like, oh, I'm back in that place now. I can use these things. Some of it relates to my body size, Some of the stuff that I picked out yesterday, oh my God, over the weekend, some of the stuff that I picked out and I sent to the charity shop looked like kids' clothing, because it was back in the size 8s, the size 10s, and that's no offence to anyone who's in that size range. It's just that I am now not in that size range. So everything just looked tiny. And I was like, if I do get to my when I get to my happy, healthy body weight, is this actually something that's going to bring me joy to wear? And if it wasn't, it went in a black bag and it's been taken down to the charity shop. And as I was doing this purge, I guess, as my husband was doing stuff in here and I was bringing him cups of tea and sandwiches and stuff, and, you know, holding this here and holding that there when he needed me. And as I was going through this, I was halfway through A Court of Silver Flames. Now, I don't want to give too many spoilers to Court of Silver Flames, but if you haven't read it, let me just say it is about someone facing, I guess, their past demons and overcoming them, I guess, is probably a really good way of describing that. And as I was as I was listening to this book on Audible, I was going through this process of facing the different versions of myself that I'd held on to. And holding on to all this stuff in this house was keeping me connected to it like a cord connection. And it was draining my power, draining my power of the here and now, you know? And I do believe that we can, to a certain extent, I believe that some modalities and stuff that, you know, we might come across, that friends of mine follow, are all to do with like past life, going back into a past life, healing that past life, you know, giving your inner child a hug when you're back there, all that kind of stuff. And that is really valid, but for some people, but for me, it is not part of my practice. I don't really do that. What I do is I go back to times in the past and I reclaim power from them. So I see the power in the versions of me that I have been before. And I believe that all of those versions have some kind of wisdom to give me in any moment of my life. And so going back to them sometimes is really, really helpful. I don't try to heal them. I don't try to change them, because whatever they went through is what actually gave them that power, you know? So if I went through something that was difficult during that time, then that will have been what gave me power. And the more I read these, romantasy and fantasy books, the more I believe that, because every single one of these heroines have to go through challenges to activate power, you know, or to find their power within them, or to connect to a power source, or whatever it might be. There's all sorts of different ways of looking at it, and I believe that is life. You know, we are put into situations so that we can tap into an inner power, and now mix that into things like epigenetics and that side of things, and it starts to really come to life. So as I was going through this process, there was a lot of this kind of stuff going on in my head, and not necessarily in my head, it was just coming up. The story was invoking it, the things that I was picking up out of the wardrobe and looking at and remembering who I was. And there was this real kind of feeling of, I've been clinging to her rather than connecting to her power, okay? So I'll give you an example. So back in the day, when we first moved into this house, one of the reasons that we have a home gym is because we were so into the gym. And by moving into this house, we basically lost a lot of free money, spare money, leisure money, whatever, however you want to word it. Because the house, we went from a 1-bedroom terraced house into a 4-bedroom detached house. So, you know, it kind of came with this caveat of things, we're going to have to tighten our belts, the luxuries are going to have to go. So we decided that we would bite the bullet and we would buy gym kit and we would have a gym at home rather than paying, I don't know, I think we were paying about £40 a month back then. So, you know, it was it was a necessity in my life, was having somewhere where I could go and train and be strong. And I was very much into that bodybuilder's lifestyle. And I talk about that a lot because I remember that time as feeling like I was so strong, so powerful, so nothing could break me almost. I used to remember like walking down the office and my waistband was baggy on my size 10 trousers. And just the feeling of my muscles contracting and moving as I was walking down the office used to feel so good. I don't have that anymore. Anyway, and so there was a piece of me that really wanted to never let that person go, because that person was like really important to me. And it was like, I remember such fondness of those times. It was before I had cancer, it was before I became ill, it was before all the situations that I'm in now. It was around the time we got married, life was good, all that kind of stuff. No, it wasn't around the time, but I got into bodybuilding as I was wanting to turn up for my wedding. So that's kind of, I say bodybuilding, it wasn't bodybuilding, it was strength training, macro eating, all that kind of stuff. And I had such energy back then, and I put it down to the fact that I was training, I was eating well, life felt good, all that kind of stuff. Maybe it was simply because I was young, but I don't think so. I think it was how I was eating, what I was eating. And the more I dig into my human design, the more I realise that actually, inadvertently, the reason I was so drawn to that way of living is actually it works really well with my human design. But that's a whole other conversation. Anyway, so I opened a drawer, and it literally had all my gym kit from back in those days. The t-shirt that I used to love to wear to the gym. The trousers, the little kind of like half leg trousers that I used to wear to the gym. It had all of it there. And in the past, I've been really against giving that up. I've been really against it. I couldn't bring myself to do it. And as I was going through this process, I realised it was time to stop allowing those different versions of me that I remember really well, stop allowing them to drain me. So when I talk about cord cutting comes up for me a lot when I am talking about feeling drained, because I feel like my energy is draining to somewhere. It's draining from me and going somewhere. So where's it going? So what are the cords that I'm connected to? Because I see an energetic cord as similar to your TV on standby. So your TV, when you turn it off at the remote, it doesn't turn it off at the plug. It doesn't turn it off at the switch of the actual machine. It just turns it off. And there's always a little red light on, right? And that means that there is always electricity running to that TV and back. There's always energy going to and from. So oftentimes when I'm feeling drained, I look into what am I connected to that I don't need to be connected to, and I cut cords. And it might be an emotional moment, a confrontation, maybe an argument, maybe I'm still connected to that. It might be a person, maybe I'm still connected to someone who was no longer in my life, I'm giving that energy. Maybe it is a moment where there was a heightened emotion. Ultimately, that's when we create a cord, is when there's a heightened emotion. So it's a heightened emotion, so you've got a really good connection to someone that has a heightened emotion, a cord's created. A heightened emotion can be a traumatic event, because it kind of like, it might activate a big massive surge of fear, of anxiety, of anger. Whenever you get that big surge, often there's a cord created to it. So you can look back over your last month or whatever and work out where you've had these surges and disconnect from them, and your energy will start to lift. Well, this is in fact the same thing what was happening with me. I couldn't let the different pieces of me go. I opened one drawer or box or whatever, and it was full of stuff to do with one of my old workplaces. Couldn't let it go. I was still connected because I was holding on to all this stuff. And every time I opened that wardrobe, even though I didn't necessarily open the box to the old work stuff, There was clothes hung up that I used to wear when I used to go to that workplace. And even if I was consciously searching for something else, subconsciously all this energy was here because of these clothes, because of this thing, you know? And in effect, you know, I'm just walking around my house kind of connected by cords, energetic cords to all these things because I'm holding on to them. You know, the stuff that I held on to because when I had breast cancer, you know, I haven't quite let everything go, but I've let a lot go. So that cord has thinned out. But the stuff that I have kept on hold of now are because of strong memories, not because I don't want to let something go. And I feel like this whole process this weekend worked me through that, you know. I cleared stuff, like I say, clothes that I used to wear at all other workplaces that no longer fit me, clothes that I used to wear during breast cancer that now just don't float my boat. You know, basically as I went through my clothes, if I picked something up that the last time I wore it, it didn't make me feel good, it went into a charity bag because I'm not about that anymore. I'm not about trying to be the version of me who was really into bodybuilding and really into the gym. I still have that power and I still have that knowledge and I can still connect to that, but I don't need to be her anymore. I am not her anymore. She is so far away in my past now, 15, 14 years. I don't think I could be her even if I tried, because the experiences and the knowledge and the life that I have since gained and been shown and the opportunities that have come forward, I'm a different person. I could never be her again, and I actually would not want to be her again. Do I want to reconnect to who she was and take some of that power and that wisdom and bring it into my real life now? Yes. And can I do that? Yes. So that is one of the tools that I use, and I call it time travel. It's not, maybe it is time travel. Who the hell really knows, right? But I will meditate and I will go back in time, and there's a whole kind of process that I do, and I will sit in that place and time and feel her energy and feel the way that she thinks and embody all that and bring that back with me. You know, the breast cancer, you know, that era. The era after breast cancer, which was actually COVID era. So my breast cancer was kind of the final treatment for my breast cancer was in the January as we went into COVID in March. You know, there's friendship groups who I am no longer friends with, you know, frequencies change, we drift apart, it is what it is. And there's things from that era that I was holding on to because I remember those times fondly. And I was holding on to those things because they were a representation. They put a cord. They were a cord, you know? And just by getting rid of those things, my energy hasn't been pulled in so many different areas. So I feel like there's been this big shift over the weekend, and I feel like it's been coming for a long time. I feel like it has been building. And I just, you know, you never know. You never truly know where you are going until you get there and you can look back and you can see the breadcrumbs of how you got here, right? You can plan as much as you want and you can follow every single step of your plan to get to the destination that you want to go in. And you can follow it blindly if you want. And that's absolutely fine. However, what I will tell you is by tuning in and having a plan and being tunnel vision on that plan, you are missing out on everything else that's happening over here. You're missing out on that opportunity that crosses your path that you can't see because you're in this tunnel. You know? By allowing the flow to take hold and to come in, you allow yourself to kind of not flow. So your sat nav, you kind of go, okay, so I want to go to this postcode area. This is the postcode area I want to go to. Maybe you're a bit more specific than that, but I want to go to this postcode area. You plug it in and you set off driving, and your sat nav tells you turn right at this traffic light, go across this roundabout, do this, do that. You You don't plan that every step of that journey before you set off. You trust your sat nav to tell you and to redirect you if there's a traffic incident or there's whatever, you know? And as you're driving, because you're not focused on this plan and just having to go that direction, you may be looking around and you see that place and that place looks amazing. So you think, do you know what? I'm going to have a detour. I'm going to go visit that place. And you've got absolute trust that your sat nav's just going to bring you back to the pathway again. You know? And that's such a really great metaphor for life and following the energy and living an energy-led life. And, you know, you can put, like I say, put in, you know, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? You know, that's the question. Where do you want to go? I want to go to a place where I feel successful, where I feel happy, where I feel abundant. That's the place I want to go to. Put it in your sat nav and let the energy lead you, you know? And now I look back to October, and in October I was looking into the 7 cycles, 7-year cycles, and 49 was a really powerful cycle. It was about embodiment, and it was about legacy, and it was about becoming all this knowledge and stuff that you've gained. It was about becoming, and it made me feel really old, and I didn't like it, to be honest. And I kind of like the idea of these 7-year cycles, but now I'm in this, and then there's a Chiron return that came this year, and I'm like, that made me feel old. And it was kind of like a lot of the stuff that I was reading about, it was like, oh, you've done you're done with your challenges of life, you've done with all that kind of stuff. Now it's just time to settle in and be quiet. And I was like, no, that is not what I want to do. And yet here I am now, 8 months later, having gone through a quite a large character arc, let's use that, having gone through a character arc, and here I am now, actually in that vibe. I am who I am. I am not trying to build something. I am not trying to create something. I am just sharing with you who I am. I am using what I already know, who I already am, to create, not to create, I'm using all of that I know, and I am putting that in my life now. I am embodying it. I feel like it's come through. I'm confident in my abilities. I'm confident in my knowledge. I'm confident in what I know. I'm confident in my ability to change frequency like that and like that. I'm confident in all of this now. And I think for the last 8 months, that's been the battle, not the battle. The arc has been this overcoming. And I feel like almost that was the final piece of it, of letting go of all these versions of me and allowing myself to be the version that all those versions of me has created. And standing in that power, grounding myself in that and being that. And that's where I feel like I am today. And that's not to say that things aren't changing, things aren't moving. I haven't got a destination in mind, because of course I have. And usually I would share that destination with you. But I've decided, I've read some neurological science where it says when you share your goal, your brain thinks it's done. So you should never ever share your goals. You should never ever share what you're going for, because we do it because we think it kind of builds accountability. If I tell everyone what I'm doing, then everyone's going to be behind me, they're going to support me, they're going to help me. No, if you tell everyone what you're doing, your brain thinks you've done it. Mad, right? These things in our bodies that we ignore and that we don't understand and all that kind of jazz, and we think we're using them to our benefit, but actually they're hindering us. They're hindering us because we aren't mind-driven beings. We are energy-driven beings. We are body-driven beings. And when we let the mind run our lives, well, Ra-Uru-Hu, who was the channeler of human design, he always said, especially for projectors, particularly non-mental, I suppose. Okay, he always said it for my design, which is self-projected projector. If you let your mind run your life, it will screw you up. It will screw up your life. So there you have it. On that note, I think I'm done. Thanks for joining me. I'll be here next time I feel like I need to talk. Self-projector vibes. And I hope that you found something useful, something interesting, something activating in my video. Catch you later.